Hey guys, it's Danny. Welcome back to another week of orchid videos. Today we are going to make a Q&A session. I have quite a few very good questions that you guys left in the comment section of my videos recently. So without further ado, let's get to work. I'm gonna try to answer as many as possible. A little reminder before we start the video, it is the final week in which you can find the Nelly Eiler merch available, and afterwards it will be gone forever. This is a collectible, so in about another month or so, there will be another design out that will match this one with a different orchid. But for now, the Nelly Eiler is going away, so if you do want something, you still have until the 21st of July to get something, and afterwards it is gone forever. Alrighty, back to the video. Brianna is asking if it's okay to repot a phalaenopsis which is growing a new leaf as well as two keikis from a previous flower spike. Yes, it is absolutely fine. We say that it's not a good idea to repot orchids and phalaenopsis which have buds and blooms because they might fall. But the keikis are part of the vegetative growth of the plant, and the best moment to repot an orchid is when it starts to grow vegetatively. So it is perfectly safe to repot an orchid which is growing keikis, but I would like to mention something here. A keiki consumes a lot of energy from the mother plant. Two keikis double the energy consumption. If your orchid is not perfectly established and it doesn't have a very nice and extensive root system, it might actually have issues coping with both of the keikis. Until they create roots of their own, she will have to pretty much feed them. And in some cases, it's too much. So keep a close eye on your orchid, particularly because it has two keikis. And if you see the leaves starting to go limp, starting to look leathery, having wrinkles, it might actually mean that you have to remove one of the keikis, even if it doesn't have roots yet, if you wish to save the mother orchid. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Just a little remark here so you pay close attention to the mother plant, because I've seen it happen quite a few times. Julius is saying that they have a cattleya which they received about 4 months ago. All of the roots were desiccated, so they went to repot it, but ever since then, the orchid did not do anything, didn't grow roots. And what to do to promote some growth? Well, in the case of cattleya orchids, things are a little bit more tricky than other orchids. So I'm guessing by now that you went ahead and tried the damp sphagnum moss and all of the other things that I do talk about on my channel of promoting roots and growth. Well, with cattleyas, these efforts can sometimes be rather useless. Some cattleyas only grow one pseudobulb per year. They have a particular season when they start to create new growth and roots, and most of the times they don't do anything. In my collection, the Mosier is one of those orchids, only grows one pseudobulb per year, only has one season when it creates roots. So no matter how we try to promote new growth and new roots, if it's just not the moment, then the orchid will simply not grow. And I've seen it happen quite a lot of times. So if you have a tag on your orchid, do Google it and see the growth pattern of that particular cattleya. It might just be one of those season cattleyas, which has very well determined growth seasons. All you can do is assist it. Of course, try to keep it in the best conditions you can. If you have high humidity conditions or you can provide them, that would be great. At this point, all you can do is try to minimize water loss. Try to maintain the orchid on a damp sphagnum moss bed. This will help root tips continue growing. And many times it is just a waiting game. Red Velvet Cream Cheese is asking me to make a video about understanding orchid names and reading orchid labels. Now, I did receive this request sometime in the past, but I wasn't sure that it was something that people would really want to see. So yeah, I can totally make that video. Let me know in a comment down below if you'd like me to make an entire video regarding labels, reading names, and maybe include here the whole thing with the reclassification and all of that madness. Yeah, let me know in the comment down below. If enough of you want this video, I'll definitely make it. Thank you for suggesting. I'm definitely considering it. Alex has a question regarding my spider mite oil solution. They're asking if the orchids get rained on, do they need to spray again or should they wait? Great question, actually. I did not think about this. Alrighty, so oils generally don't mix with water. They don't dissolve in water. Hence why in my solution I put a little bit of dish soap just to make the oil mix a little bit more with the water so we have a more even application. So theoretically, once the oil is dried and stuck on the leaf, simple water should not remove it. However, of course, if we run enough water, we might remove some. Whenever I had to deal with very oily leaves, and I actually did have to, links down below, I actually washed them with dish soap, and even so, I couldn't really properly wash the leaf. So I'm guessing that if just a little rain falls on the leaves, it should be perfectly fine, but if enough rain falls on the leaves, maybe some of that oil will just be washed away. The best thing to do is to inspect the leaves properly after the rain has stopped, when everything is dry, and see if you still have a sheen of oil. Remember, you don't want too much oil, so as long as you can see a little bit, maybe even feel a little bit of tackiness, then that's okay, you don't need to respray. But if you consider that everything is gone, you can respray. Just to be safe, mix it at maybe 1% or 0.5% even, just to be on the safe side. That is a very good, very valid question. I didn't think about that. Thank you so much for asking. Wife of Grumpy Old Marine, nice name, is asking about a blue painted Phalaenopsis orchid. They're asking for some help with this poor orchid. So first of all, yes, it's perfectly fine to cut away the dried portion of the aerial roots. Do not remove the aerial roots. If they're fleshy, if they green up when you water them, they will actually help the orchid. So far you did good. And about the paint, well, that's normal. I'll link you down below to an experiment that we made a while back. I tried to paint my own Phalaenopsis and succeeded. The way they insert the paint into the flower is through the actual flower spike. Now the problem is it goes into the sap stream of the orchid as well, and it ends up in the leaves, maybe even the roots. I didn't actually use as much paint. Results, as you could see in that video, are not very intense blue orchids. So I'm guessing they are using a more concentrated paint or a bigger quantity. So yes, you will have some stains. What I would do right now is just cut away the flower spikes. If your orchid is done with flowering or you just don't want to see those flowers anymore, cut the flower spikes all the way down to the base, leave about 1 inch or 2 centimeters from the base of the orchid, and then cut it right here. This will make sure that the orchid will not try to put its energy into new flowers, which, by the way, will be white or a washed blue. Depends how much of that dye is still in the sap stream. So cut away those spikes so the orchid goes into vegetative growth, meaning creation of new leaves and new roots. Of course, repotting is a great thing to do right now after the blooms have fallen. Links down below to repotting guides and things of the sorts if you're interested. And just treat the orchid normally, like any other Phalaenopsis. You will still have that paint in the orchid for a while, but with time it will dissipate. It might be exuded through the happy sap. It will just dissipate throughout the orchid and it will disappear, and the orchid will transform into a beautiful, perfectly white Phalaenopsis orchid. The next blooming might still have some blue traits, depends again on the amount of the paint they used, but she should be perfectly normal. Just care for it normally. I will make sure to just add a bunch of links down below about Phalaenopsis, which hopefully will help you out. Emma is saying that her orchid is down to 1 leaf and a few roots, and it's now growing lots and lots of roots. Well, that's a good thing. However, the new leaves the orchid is growing are very tiny. So far, it produced 2 of these tiny leaves. Emma is worried that the orchid will not fix itself. Is it normal setback or could it be a virus? Well, I am inclined to say it's absolutely normal. If you don't have leaves, then you don't have enough sap because there isn't enough material there to photosynthesize. And whatever the roots will photosynthesize is just not enough. Another one of my viewers pointed out that the surface area of the roots is simply not enough to take the place of the leaves in the video which we made on Friday. I'll link it down below. So great point from my viewer as well. So I do think it is normal that the first few leaves will be small, particularly because you lost all of the other leaves. So for now, I wouldn't worry. If you have 10 of these very tiny leaves without any real reason, then yeah, it's a problem. But the tiny leaves will act like a bigger leaf. So the orchid will be able to regain its energy, it will photosynthesize more and more. The more tiny leaves, the better actually. And at some point, you will see the leaves growing bigger and bigger. Each one will be just slightly bigger than the other one. Depends on the amount of setback. As you could see in that video, this setback can actually take quite a few years, and visually it can look rather scary. So for now, I wouldn't worry. I've seen cases like that. You just need to be a little patient. Once again, keyword here with orchids, patience, as many of us already know. But yeah, if you see 10 of these leaves, yeah, there might be an issue there. But up to 5 of these leaves might be quite normal. Just look for slight differences between them. At some point, every new leaf will grow just a little bit bigger than the previous one, and that is a great sign. The orchid grows at its own pace pretty much. The fact that you have roots, that's a very, very good sign. They will greatly help the orchid. So for now, I believe everything is pretty normal. Mac is saying that the flower spike of our orchid is turning yellow-brown at the very top. Normally, it wouldn't be something to worry about, but this time the flower spike is growing a keiki just 2 nodes below the beginning of the dryness. What to do? Alrighty, so fear not, these things can happen. So let me grab a phalaenopsis and I'll explain. Okay, here we go. I have an example here as well. As you can see, the branch of this flower spike is completely dried out. But as you can see, the drying doesn't appear to continue anywhere else. And this is because every node is pretty much a segment. Now, I think your issue is that the main flower spike has started to dry. That's okay. What you can do is cut way below the drying part above one of these nodes. Leave about 1/2 inch, 2 centimeters above this node, and here's where you can cut it. In most cases, the drying will not advance downwards. What's happening is the orchid is putting its energy into the keiki, so it is delivering sap there, but there's no point in maintaining this flower spike. Many times it will dry on its own just like this and stop right here, and you don't really need to do anything. But just to be sure, you can actually cut it because there is a very, very, very remote chance that the drying is caused by a pathogen or something. So just to eliminate any potential risks, go ahead and cut the flower spike under the yellow part in good tissue but above a node. And I think everything should be okay. The orchid is already maintaining the segment with the keiki alive because the keiki is there, so she is pumping energy and nutrients there, and I think everything will be okay. And one last question, one of my viewers is asking, how can we grow orchids on trees? Well, there are a few things to think about before deciding to put an orchid on a tree. First of all, climate. Orchids require specific climate conditions. If you have a pretty chilly winter, chances are you cannot keep your orchids on trees. I mean, you could, but you would have to bring them in the winter time, and that can only happen if your orchid is potted and you're just putting it next to the tree outside, which I don't think is what you're asking. You're asking how to actually attach and grow these orchids on the trees. Well, since they will be attached and pretty much be on the tree forever, you need to have an adequate climate for them. So depending on the species, you have to decide if you can grow them outside all the time or not. Not even me in a subtropical climate. My winter is a little bit too much, so that option for me is off the table. Second, you need to have a tree, and again, many of us do not have a garden or any means of attaching the orchid to our personal tree. However, if you're one of those very, very lucky people who lives in an orchid-friendly country, who has a yard and a tree to attach orchids on, then you can treat these orchids just like mounts. Mounts are trying to replicate an orchid being attached to a tree. So you can search the whole internet for orchids growing on mounts. I'll link you to some videos that I made in the past as well, and pretty much apply the same techniques to orchids on trees. You'll have to tie them to the tree. Make sure you water them at least once a day. If it's not raining enough in your climate, make sure to feed them at least from time to time. Being that they're outside, they might not need as much nutrients as inside. So there are a few things that you need to discover on your own, but pretty much just like people grow them mounted, you can grow them on trees as well. This is the second time or third time somebody's asking me how to grow orchids on trees. So maybe it's going to be a trend soon. If it starts to become a trend, please assess your climate first. Don't go and attach your orchids to the trees, and in the winter time realize that your winter is a little bit too cold and you have to unmount the orchid. And with that said, it's time to end. Very interesting questions this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. And you know the drill, like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And if you like to support the channel, do consider visiting the merch store down below. Don't forget, one more week of the Nelly Eiler merch, and then it's gone forever. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!